Version 2.2 of the AOPA Flight Planner includes two new features: a range tool for aiding in time, distance, and fuel planning, and support for ICAO flight plans and aircraft equipment. We'll take a look at both of these new features in this video. We'll start with the range tool, but if you want to jump directly to the ICAO part of the video, there's a link in the description that will take you directly to that portion of the video. The new range tool is an easy-to-use tool that allows you to place a concentric ring overlay anywhere on the chart. The rings can be displayed in three different modes: time, distance, or fuel. In addition, the number of rings and the ring spacing can be controlled in the time and distance modes. The fuel mode allows us to set a fuel quantity and then displays safety zones based on the remaining fuel. Let's take a look at the distance rings first. To use the range tool, click on the range tool icon in the right side toolbar. The icon looks like a red target. Once selected, a white frame will outline the icon on the toolbar, indicating that you have this tool selected. Moving the mouse over the chart displays a crosshair cursor, prompting us to click the chart to position the range tool on a center location. If we click in an area that has one or more routable waypoints, a pop-up search box will prompt us to select which waypoint we want to use as the ring center. Or we can just place it on the actual coordinates that we clicked with the cursor. I'll select the KHGR airport and click the center button. The range tool rings now center on HGR and draws 5 concentric circles based on distance. We can adjust the ring spacing using the spacing box in the range tool control panel, or by simply selecting the edge of a ring and dragging the cursor. Using the range tool control panel, we can also set the number of rings that we want to be displayed. Clicking and holding on the center of the rings allows us to reposition the rings to any location on the chart by simply dragging and dropping them in a new location. As before, a search results box will prompt us for the location to center on if there is one or more routable waypoints in that location. We'll select Whiskey 05, Gettysburg Regional Airport. In addition to seeing distance, the range tool can also be placed into time mode and show the estimated time per ring. To use this mode, select the Time Radio button in the mode options. Adjusting the rings in time mode is the same as when in distance mode. Take note that the times shown for each ring are based on straight line distance at cruise speed and do not consider winds aloft, climb, or descent. The last range tool mode we'll look at is fuel mode. To enable this mode, select the Fuel Radio button from the mode options. This mode shows color-coded zones that are calculated based on the remaining fuel quantity of the aircraft selected in the active route, or the default aircraft if no route is currently loaded. The green zone extends to a point where the aircraft would have 90 minutes of remaining fuel. The yellow zone extends to a point where the aircraft would have 60 minutes of fuel remaining, and the red zone is where the aircraft would have 60 minutes or less of fuel. As with the time calculations we looked at earlier, the fuel calculations are based on straight line and do not consider winds aloft, climb, or descent. In addition, calculations are based on the cruise fuel burn rate as entered in the aircraft profile, so these tools should be used for rough planning purposes only. Always consult the nav log for more accurate fuel usage once you have a planned route. The fuel quantity defaults to the maximum fuel capacity as entered into the aircraft profile. The fuel mode allows the fuel quantity to be adjusted by using the fuel slider in the range tool control panel. This updates the zones to reflect the new ranges based on the adjusted fuel quantity. This does not change the maximum fuel capacity as saved in the aircraft profile. The range tool makes planning long cross-country flights easier by assisting in determining if a fuel stop should be planned. We can see here that our destination of KTHA is well within the red zone, so we should plan a fuel stop for this trip. You can further enhance the range tool by enabling the Fuel Along Route overlay to display fuel prices along with the range tool. To turn the Fuel Along Route overlay on, select it from the Airports group in the Overlays window. You can expand the route corridor using the slider to include more airports and prices. Now we can better see the optimal point where we would want to plan a fuel stop for our route. It looks like this airport has the best fuel prices and is within the 60 to 90 minute fuel reserve zone. Again, since these calculations do not consider winds aloft, we'll want to refer to the nav log for more accurate fuel calculations before we determine our actual fuel stop. The other new feature introduced in version 2.2 is support for ICAO Flight Plans. The Flight Planner still supports domestic flight plans, but now you have an option to also file ICAO plans. ICAO flight plans require a little more information than a domestic flight plan. Fortunately, most of this information only has to be entered one time and then is saved for future use. In this part of the video, we'll take a look at the steps you need to do in order to file an ICAO flight plan. The first part we need to look at is the aircraft profile. You will need to complete the ICAO equipment and emergency sections and then save the profile before you can file an ICAO flight plan. Each aircraft you have saved in the flight planner will have to have its own ICAO equipment and emergency sections completed if you want to file an ICAO flight plan with that aircraft. This is a one-time operation and once saved does not need to be performed each time you file an ICAO flight plan. First, open an aircraft profile. Click on Tools, then Aircraft Info, and select the aircraft from your list of saved aircraft. I'll choose November 330 Mike Echo and click the Edit button. This will open the aircraft details to the Basic Information tab. You'll now notice two new tabs at the top, Equipment and Emergency. These are where we enter our ICAO information. On the Equipment tab, we need to enter ICAO formatted codes that identify our COM, nav, approach, and surveillance equipment. The first drop-down list you'll see is labeled FAA Equipment Code. This is the traditional code that is used when filing domestic flight plans and may already be filled in based on your previous settings. This is a required field, so you can leave it as is or update it for use when filing a domestic flight plan. Below that is a text entry box for the ICAO equipment code. You can manually type in this field and enter the ICAO code for your aircraft. However, since most people are unfamiliar with all the various codes and how to enter them, we have provided a form below that field that is essentially an ICAO code generator. Filling in the fields in this form will enter the correct ICAO codes for you. We'll start on the COM, nav, and approach equipment side. You'll see two checkboxes at the top. One is None for no or unserviceable equipment, and the other can be used when you have what ICAO defines as standard equipment. Standard equipment is VHF COM radio, VOR radio, and ILS capability. You can use this checkbox to simplify your selection entry or individually select the options in the drop-down list below. You'll notice that when I check the standard box, it automatically enters the three options in the drop-down lists and inserts the S code into the code entry box. Additional equipment can then be selected if needed. Click in each of the drop-down lists and select all the options that apply. The code for each selected option will be added to the code entry box at the top. The codes and format created in the code entry box follow the ICAO requirements, so it is recommended that you do not alter the code structure unless you are familiar with ICAO code formatting. You will see that there are many options in the drop-down lists, many of which you may be unfamiliar with. Since ICAO codes support general aviation as well as large commercial passenger and cargo type aircraft, many of the codes will not apply to typical general aviation aircraft. A general rule for knowing if you should select an option or not is, if you don't know what it is, then you probably don't have it. So it's best not to check the options unless you are absolutely sure that you have that type of equipment. On the surveillance equipment side, select all the options that apply. If you have ADS-B out, you will then see another required field appear labeled hex code. Since most people don't know their assigned Mode S hex code, we have included a search to assist in locating it. Click on the magnifying glass next to the hex code field. That will launch a new browser window and take you to the FAA Registry search page. Enter the N number for your aircraft and click the Submit button. Once the aircraft details page loads, you can locate the Mode S code in the Aircraft Description section. There are 2 Mode S codes listed, and the one that needs to be entered into the flight planner is the base 16 hex code. Enter this code into the hex code field in the flight planner. An easy way to do this is simply copy the code and paste it into the field back in the flight planner. Complete both sides of the form and then click the Save button at the bottom when finished. Once you have completed the Equipment tab fields, select the Emergency tab at the top and enter the appropriate options here too. Once completed, click the Save button at the bottom. This completes the ICAO configuration for that aircraft. Repeat this procedure for each saved aircraft profile that you have that you'll be using to file ICAO flight plans. Next, we'll look at filing an ICAO flight plan. With an active route loaded, click on the Route menu item and select Briefings and Flight Plans. Alternatively, you can click on the File button that is at the bottom of the Edit Route window. They will both take you to the same location. The Briefings and Flight Plans window will open and a new FAA Flight Plan tab will be selected by default. The FAA form is the standard one that you can use when filing a domestic flight plan. You'll notice a new tab at the top to the right of the FAA Plan tab called New ICAO Flight Plan. This is the form that we will use to file an ICAO flight plan. We'll select this tab to start. At the top, you'll see that your entire route is listed for review. Below the route summary, you'll see individual blocks where specific details are entered. Most of these fields will be pre-populated based on the information you entered when you created your route. Review these values, and if any need to be modified, you can do so by clicking the Edit link next to the field. Any of the fields that have an asterisk next to them are required fields and must be entered before submitting. Be sure to scroll all the way to the bottom of the form and verify all fields. The Remarks section is where special remarks are entered. You can manually enter text into this field if you know the ICAO formatting structure. If not, then you can click the Advanced button and use the Remark Entry form to assist with entering them. You'll notice that there is already one remark entered for our flight. It is DEP/W05. This remark has been automatically created by the flight planner since our departure airport does not have an ICAO identifier. ICAO flight plans require departure and destination airports to have an ICAO identifier. For those that do not have ICAO identifiers, the flight plan will be filed with ZZZZ entered into the departure or destination field, and then include an accompanying remark that lists the airport's domestic identifier. So in this case, a remark has been added automatically denoting our departure airport identifier as Whiskey 05. It is recommended that you leave any remark that the flight planner has automatically created in place. You can add additional remarks by clicking the Add Remark button and then selecting the remark code from the drop-down list, and then enter the detail for that code in the entry box next to it. Each remark code has a tooltip next to it to help identify its purpose. Once you have reviewed and completed all fields, click the Submit button at the bottom of the form to file the flight plan. More information about ICAO flight plans is available on the AOPA website at aopa.org. This concludes this video, and as always, thank you for watching.